This man is a lifer. If you know what a lifer is, that means a lifelong fan, into the scene, the whole thing. He is a true lifer, legend from the early days of the metal scene. And he's also the lead singer and main man behind the legendary thrash metal band Hirax. Mr. Katon W, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, Brian. Good to see you. Good to be here, man.
Good to see you. Nice shirt, by the way. Yeah, very
Yeah,
cool.
man. Gotta pay tribute to Ace, man.
100%, 100%. We're
Wow.
gonna go back and something that probably that might have influenced Ace a little bit, or might have been influenced by Ace actually. Judas Priest Exciter. I'm excited, pun intended, to talk about this song because it's obviously been on my list. And for me, this is a really important song when it comes to heavy metal because arguably this is the first edition of a speed metal song.
Definitely. I think for anybody that's, goes back to that period of time, hearing that song for the first time for me literally blew my mind. The drum intro, I mean, even just that, the drum intro, you just pay attention right away. And I think, obviously back to Ace Frehley, the influence is felt throughout the whole hard rock and heavy metal scene. So I'm sure somehow Ace is in there. It's like part of the DNA. But back to Exciter, the song, Judas Priest. The incredible thing is, if you think about it, Killing Machine was released the same year as Stay in Class. A little bit later, but still same year. That's when bands like them and AC/DC were doing 2 records a year. So to have that much material, if you think between Killing Machine, which is Hell Bent for Leather, and Stay in Class, which to me those 2 records alone, like I mean, obviously there's so many great Priest records, but when you get to Stay in Class and that opening track of Exciter, it's totally groundbreaking. People use the word game changer loosely, but Exciter is a complete game changer. The complete song from beginning to end, even the ending is epic. I mean, so it's kind of hard to like, there's so many moments through that song that you're taken on a journey, a heavy metal journey, so to speak. And I would definitely trace speed metal and even thrash metal. That's like the Godfather. And even if you look at other songs that came after it, songs like Fast as a Shark, to me, it's kind of like Judas Priest with Exciter. They set the bar for other bands. Like even, I mean, let's even go to Metallica. Think about Fight Fire with Fire. Opening tracks to records became really important, especially after Exciter came out. So your first impressions mean a lot.
100%. And some people go back to Speed King by Deep Purple as being the origin one, which I can get. Maybe that was the first installment of it, but Exciter took it up another notch. And I'm with you. This is my favorite Priest album. I love Stay in Class from
Yeah,
beginning
yeah.
to end. It's just a classic heavy metal album, and really one of the first real true heavy metal albums from beginning to end. And I know Black Sabbath, of course, the forefathers, and they're that way too, but this one to me just embodied everything about metal: the lyrics, the song structures, the way they were. And it kind of paved the way for modern metal, and a lot because Exciter, because this predated Bomber by about a year. And you mentioned Fast as the Shark, which Fast as the Shark probably took it up another notch, maybe,
Yeah.
and certainly was like, oh, raise the bar, we can be even faster. And then then all the I mean, so many of these bands came from LA, you guys and Metallica and Slayer, all these so many Megadeth was
Yeah.
formed in LA. So it kind of started this whole ball rolling with the LA bands, and obviously a million other bands. But yeah, this song, and you're right, when I first heard the record, because I was into Priest by the time this record came out. So I bought it right when it came out and put it on it. And exactly, I think I just sat there in my bedroom listening to this song going, what is happening? This
Yeah.
is so mind blowing at the time. Again, you got to go back to, 1978, and, nothing like this had ever been, we hadn't heard anything like this before. We heard stuff that was fast-ish and stuff, with the double kick drums, and oh my gosh. And shout out to the great Les Banks, who is
Oh
just
my God. Yeah. I mean,
phenomenal.
seriously. Yeah. And, 3 records is all he needed to do. And he's definitely cemented as one of the greatest Judas Priest drummers of all time. I mean, I think he's another thing that, like, kind of set the bar. Like, look at who they have now. You have to get a drummer like they have now to be able to continue on this kind of heavy metal. So Les Binks is very important, and obviously the dual guitar attack of KK and Glenn. Those two are special, like beyond measure. Like, when you look back at dual guitar players, obviously Thin Lizzy comes to mind, and then, but look at the impact that even Priest had on, say, a band like Iron Maiden. Like, I love Iron Maiden, but you cannot say that they would be the way they are if it wasn't for a band like Judas Priest. They're really important. I don't think that Exciter still to this day gets enough credit because there's so many other great songs that Priest wrote after that. You have to be like a diehard Priest fan to reach back into that catalog and know that that's like it's a diamond. It's a jewel.
Oh, a million percent. I'm with you on everything you said. And the one thing too that was really interesting about Priest, I always remember, like in the '70s, we talk a lot about '70s stuff on this show because that's the foundation of metal as we know it. But a lot of these bands didn't want to be called heavy metal, or we're a rock band. We don't want to be called heavy metal. I mean, Sabbath was, you're going to be called heavy metal whether you like it or not. And they're like, okay, fine. But Priest was the one like carrying the banner in the '70s because all the other bands, whether it's UFO or as you mentioned, Thin Lizzy or anybody else that was, perceivably metal in our eyes as we, as we kind of get into this stuff. But Priest was like, we're a heavy metal band. We're proud to be called heavy metal because it was still, people now it's ingrained in our society and it's a genre. It's one of the most popular genres in the world. But back then it was still kind of youthful. And bands didn't like to be called heavy metal for some reason. I guess I mean, bands don't like to be called anything, which I get that. But for Priest to come out and kind of wave the banner, no, we are a heavy metal band. That was huge.
Yeah, they spoke it on stage. I mean, seeing them, I didn't get to see them in the '70s. I wish, but I saw them in the very early '80s. And luckily for me, living in Long Beach, they came through the Long Beach Arena quite a few times. So uh, one of my favorite times I saw them was actually a little bit later. I saw them on the Point of Entry tour, and they were still amazing. They just set the bar, like look wise, the image, and like you said, they were definitely a heavy metal band, and that made a lot of us proud. Because basically back then, heavy metal was like the bastard child. So you had to be proud and loud about it, and then you also had to face a lot of other trendy music that was saying that heavy metal was bad. Even though in our hearts we knew that it was such a great thing and it brought so many people together. When you look at the heavy metal community, bands like Judas Priest brought us all together. A lot of us are friends because of Judas Priest. It's a big heavy metal family.
Yeah, 100%. And I went to all those Long Beach shows as well as you did, and I did get to see them though in '79. That was the first time I saw them.
Wow.
They were of course spectacular. But one of my biggest regrets of all time was I believe it was in 1978 on this tour. I believe Judas Priest played the Starwood in LA, which was this legendary club about maybe 1,000 people or something. They played there, and I was going to go. I had tickets, and my mom was going to let me go.
Oh man,
I had a car, so it wasn't like a big deal. But 2 days before that, it was just an old Plymouth Duster, the piece of garbage. But I shut the door, and I guess because it's so hot out, the window shattered.
Wow.
And I was, oh my God, I couldn't get it fixed in time because I don't think I had the money or whatever. But I wasn't trying. I was so afraid to drive to Hollywood with the window out. Somebody's gonna steal my car, and
I get it.
So I didn't go. Now in retrospect, I'm like, I should have just gone.
Yeah, I heard
prayed
about
or something.
I heard about that show because that was a legendary show, and even back then, I heard they were still using the motorcycle. I heard that he was still bringing the motorcycle. I don't know how he got it into Starwood because luckily, I think for people like us back then, we were lucky to go to the Starwood. I saw Y&T there.
Yep.
Right before they released Earthshaker, and it was amazing. Like that's one of those clubs I feel like it was a rite of passage. If you got to go to the Starwood, you obviously got to witness somebody that was great because most of the best bands played there. But yeah, that pre-show is legendary. I wish I would have saw that too. Unfortunately, I didn't get to. But for us that were able to see them early on, like it's great to see that they're still going. Like I'm so proud still of that band. Like if you're gonna go as long as any like they have and have the catalog that they have, like their records are still great. I don't care what anybody says. To be releasing records that like they are right now at this point in their career, Judas Priest is one of the greatest bands on the planet still.
100%. And the last two records are really phenomenal. That was, for a while I was a little, every record had a couple good songs on it, but I wasn't super into it. But the last two were spectacular. They got
Yeah.
it back, and also just live. I think you're getting Richie in the band. And as much as I hate KK not being there, because KK's
Yeah,
so
dude, I
phenomenal.
get it. That's a whole nother segment, dude. Because, dude, KK fans are loyal. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the band, but it does kind of hurt me that KK's not there. Because if you saw them, especially with KK, there was just a certain spice that that band had with him. And don't get me wrong, Richie's doing a great job. So I think for all the Priest fans, just to keep the band going, and they're in good form. Like, I've seen live footage and they're still in great form. But KK is a little bit of it hits me in the heart a bit because I love KK. Grew up on him.
Yeah, me too. And as by the way, phenomenal solos on this song too by both Glenn and KK. But I was always a bit more of a KK guy. I just liked the way he played, and it was really interesting because those two guys played very differently. Which, I mean, a lot of bands who have two guitar players that happens, but there's such a big dynamic here. But it works, like it just works so well. It's like, wow, there's totally different solos, totally different players, but it just the chemistry between them on vinyl and stuff and live and everything else was just tremendous.
Undeniable. And the word that I would use is epic between KK and Glenn. Especially, we could do this all day, but if you go back to songs like Genocide and Sinner, all that stuff, especially the live album. Talk about chemistry. That live album changed a billion bands. Like for me, the live album and obviously Stained Class and Hellbent for Leather, that's in our DNA. Like you can't help but somewhere, go back and grab some stuff out of there for your band. Like they changed so much in heavy metal music, and I actually owe them. I owe them a couple of bucks. I owe Judas Priest some money.
Don't we all, right? Yeah, you mentioned the live album, which is really interesting because I mean I like that
Outsiders
live.
on there too.
Yep, I mean I like that album a lot. It's really good, but for whatever reason, me personally, I didn't put it up with Kiss Alive or a lot of these other live albums. But I did. We had I was talking Victim of Changes on here with my buddy Ron Capps, great NHRA funny car driver,
Yeah.
and he's a little bit younger, so his first Priest album was the live album. So when I said let's do Victim of Changes, he's like perfect. So I kind of was thinking about the studio version of it. He's like, no, I came in on the live version. That's the one that I know that I love the most. So I was like, wow. So I forget about that. The more I talk to Priest fans about that record, the more it's like this kind of seminal record for Judas Priest that tied a lot of stuff together for them that I didn't really, I guess, figure it out at the moment or something.
No, you're right. And I have to agree with you, like Kiss Alive and Kiss 2 and Thin Lizzy, Double Live and Dangerous. It's hard to put it completely in there because, also production wise, it's a great record. Don't get me wrong. I love Unleashed in the East. It's one of my favorites. I think that luckily when we were growing up, some of the rougher sounding records we still ended up falling in love with. But and it's also just one vinyl. It's not like a double vinyl like when you're used to hearing a lot of the live albums from back in the 70s and early 80s were double live. But it's definitely a seminal record. Like you have to, if you have a Priest collection, like most of us do, you have to have Unleashed in the East. It's very important. But a little nugget I would suggest for anybody that's a Priest freak is the Mud Club recordings, which is now easier to get. I don't know if you've heard that.
No,
Yeah, there's
enlighten me.
Yeah, I think it's 1978, right around there. There's a from New York City, the Mud Club
Oh,
recordings.
okay. I know now what you're talking about. Yeah, I think I have them. But speaking of the Starwood, though, real quick, there is some great bootlegs of the Starwood. Apparently, it was I don't know if it's on the radio or I don't remember it being on the radio, but it might have been.
Wow.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Wow, somebody's quick. Yeah, I need that then. That's what's so funny because like we, back in the day we listened to live, broadcast and all that. And there were some really great Priest ones, obviously. I remember all those live broadcasts with bands like Crocus and Priest and all that. But I'm gonna need this Priest recording for sure.
Yeah, our producer Christian put up this tape of Judas Priest live in Hollywood, March 29, 1979.
That list is awesome.
I wonder because I'm wondering if that's where did you get this, Christian?
I just Googled it. I was looking for the set list and I found it a printed version of it.
Yeah,
But
this is
this is somebody's cassette. It's the same date though, and it's at the Starwood, even though it just says Hollywood
That's
California.
is it
awesome.
really interesting?
Yeah.
Okay, first then it must have been 79. For some reason I had 78 in my head that there's a Starwood, but it must have been 79 because I know they came back later that year and played maybe I think it was probably Long Beach or some places as I
Yeah,
remember. But interesting.
that's amazing. Especially when you look at they opened up with Exciter and went into Delivering the Goods was number 2 on that set. That's just badass.
I'll let you guys get back up to it, but I do want to point out that anybody who ever taped a show, you have right there, Victim of Changes, side B, Victim of Changes continued.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you couldn't control when the tape ended. I love that.
That's the
I,
way it was, man. That's almost like an 8-track.
as a former bootlegger at recording, hundreds of shows, that happened to be a lot. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
I get it.
Interesting. The other thing I want to talk about real quickly too, obviously we talked about it with our buddy Jay Rustin right before you came on, is the production of this. And I love 70s production anyway, because it's all real. It's real instruments. There's no
Love it.
bells and whistles and, all
Yeah.
the stuff we have today. Pro Tools and everything. So, but I love the sound of it. There's something very metal sounding about this record, and all the Priest records sounded pretty good. I mean, I think all the production they did, and they all sounded pretty good. But for me, this one kind of begat, I think, a lot of bands going back, myself and Slayer included, when we were in the studio making those early Slayer records. Carrie's favorite band of all time is Priest, so we would definitely steal production tricks from Pans and other things from there. But I just love the way this record sounded.
Yeah, it's an amazing record. Like I said, for me, number 2 would be Hellbent, but they weren't too far apart, and they did have some of the same producers working on those records. But yeah, it's just I think it's got more of a darker feel to it. Like especially when you get to stuff like no, when you get to Beyond the Realms of Death, the mood on that track is just. It takes you to another world. Like some of that stuff, we were kind of crazy kids back in the day, so we would actually turn off the lights in the room and listening to those records. So Beyond the Realms of Death was one of those tracks that we turn out the lights and listen to it. But the production's amazing. The drums, like you said, you get real stuff on that whole record from beginning to end. So the drums and the guitar tones, the bass tones, and obviously we haven't gotten to the elephant in the room, Halford.
Oh yeah.
I mean, geez, come on. Like for all singers in heavy metal, Halford's in the top 3, no problem.
Yeah.
It's insane what he's been. Even at his age now, I marvel at him. There's a couple of guys, him and even Dickinson, that they're singing at the level that they're singing at, especially if you're a singer and you know how it is to travel from city to city, from country to country. But Halford, obviously he's taken better care of himself. That's another thing that's now become a thing with a lot of us that have gotten older. You have to take really good care of yourself when you're touring, you know. So I have nothing but mad respect for Rob Halford. I've been a fan since day one, since I started listening to them. But to see what he's been able to do and accomplish as a vocalist is unbelievable. So he's basically a marvel to me. Like I can't get over how great he is.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the most influential vocalists of all time, certainly in heavy metal. It's funny, when I first heard Judas Priest, I don't know if you were able to get this station when it was up, but there's a station called K West.
I remember K
Existed,
West.
yeah, in like the mid '70s. That's why I heard like UFO, Judas Priest, Kiss,
All the
so
good
many
stuff,
bands.
man.
And the first thing I heard was Sad Wings of Destiny by Priest on there. I forget which song they played, but might have been Victim of Changes. But when I was listening to it, I thought that they had 2 singers, because he's got the low voice and the high voice. I thought, oh, there's 2 different singers. I thought that's one guy doing the whole thing.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, and Sad Wings is another record that you'd have to take a whole segment to talk about, because that record's got so much. That's where it gets a little tough. Sad Wings, Sin After Sin. Obviously, when I think that's what's great about Staying Class is it goes up a
Yep.
level. But those 2 records before it are great, and even Rock-a-Rolla. That's now we're getting hardcore here, but so I just think if you fell in love with Priest, you fell in love with, especially with all of it, basically. But yeah, Staying Class to me is the pinnacle. Exciter opens up a whole. I mean, I don't think you would have, some of the stuff later on if it wasn't for Exciter. You know, there's epic tracks that came way later, but I think Priest still went back and said, "Oh, we got to try to top this," or getting Scott Travis in the band helped a lot too.
Yeah, Scott's the perfect guy because he could play like Les Binks, but he can also get like real solid, like Dave did as well. So he's a great dude too. So he's certainly another guy that elevated that band too. But again, to go back to this song really quickly, I always find it amazing when you look back on something. Here's a song that basically started a genre of music. Like to go
Agreed.
back and pinpoint something, that's the epicenter of where all of this started. Is
Yeah.
really kind of mind blowing because they're just a bunch of English guys in their 20s making a record, and they kept like upping themselves. You mentioned it's because that's first string of records all the way through Killing Machine or Hellbent for Leather, whatever you want to call it. That's
Yeah.
just like one amazing record after another one. But I think that the level of playing and songwriting and everything for me at that point kind of peaked here. And writing a song like Exciter that's just so mind-boggling, incredible, different on so many different levels.
The vocals, the guitar playing, the intertwining of everything too. Like when you think about how they weaved everything, uh, you just have to listen to it. For anybody that like is watching this, when they watch this episode, they need to go and listen to Exciter to experience what we're talking about. And especially they better play it really loud. But it's the otherworldly. It really is. I mean, we're not overstating it. We're not hyping it. We're telling the truth about this track. I mean, it opens up the record and then the record just gets better and better as you listen to it. But for me, that is a defining moment in my life, that song, and I think it changed a lot of the way a lot of us think. I think we all had to up our game too. I mean, we tried to play faster because of that song.
And I always have to caution people that, here we're in 2025 now. So, there's been a lot of fast and faster and fastest and all these sort of things. But you have to kind of go back to the mindset of, okay, it's 1978 and this is before all this stuff happened. And this is where it all began. But I do love the one thing I will say about the latest, well, I won't say just the latest, but probably ever since the early 2000s, like all the newer metal bands and the younger kids and stuff, they love all this 70s and 80s stuff, and they talk about it endlessly, which I think has been a really big help to kind of show like, hey, this is the history, this is where it started. This is,
Yeah.
if it wasn't for all of these bands doing all this stuff back then, we wouldn't all be doing it now, and we wouldn't all be fans now either.
Yeah, it's even for me now, especially touring, like we're doing all over the world, to see it. I mean, I don't know if the resurgence is the perfect word, but to see Judas Priest patches and jackets and, shirts, and they're still one of the top bands. Don't get me wrong. Like there's certain bands like Motorhead and Iron Maiden, but Priest is always in the mix. So it does to show that the kids are doing their homework. And I think that's what's really great about heavy metal, is that when you get into it, you become like almost like where you have to research. Like even before this, I have to admit, I went back over my notes on just Exciter alone, because I'm a Priest loyalist. So I think you really have to know your shit if you're going to talk about this kind of music. But to see the kids embrace it the same way, like they're really doing their homework. And it's amazing to talk to a 16-year-old kid today that actually knows about a song like Exciter.
Oh yeah, it's pretty commonplace, and I'm kind of somewhat obsessed with the iTunes metal chart just because I like to go see what people are listening to and what's going on. So I look at it a couple times a week, and this record in particular. I mean, the early Priest stuff. Something will happen with Priest. They're on tour or whatever, or they're in the news for whatever reason, and I'll go back and look at a lot of the early stuff ends up popping on that chart for a little while, including this record, which always makes me very happy because it's probably my favorite Priest record. Is
Yeah,
this one.
it's mandatory, but I have to admit, right next to it for me is Killing Machine, Hellbent for Leather. I mean, like I said, those are all different discussions, but like I said, without staying class, I don't know where we'd be. Like even when I listened to the first Iron Maiden record, I still think they had to have listened to the Staying Class and said we've got to up our game. No
Oh
matter who.
yeah. I mean, yeah, Maiden's been very open about their influence, and certainly Priest. Although they've had kind of a troubling relationship with Priest for some reason. First time I ever saw Iron Maiden was on the Killers tour. They opened for Priest in Houston, Texas. They weren't coming at that point to California, so I flew all the way to Houston to
Yeah.
see them. The show was amazing. Priest was phenomenal. Iron Maiden was incredible. I got to actually interview Steve Harris afterwards for my fanzine, which is still the only time I've ever talked to him in all these years, which is
Wow.
bizarre. But nonetheless, but if you read both of the Maiden books and specifically the Priest books, Halford and KK and stuff, they there was some weird tension between those two bands. I think it was maybe the competition of it, because clearly, Maiden were the new Priest, the new,
Yeah.
holders of the heavy metal banner and the title and the whole thing. So there might have been that, and they've never toured since then. We've always kind of talked about that, and I've talked to Smallwood about it, but just kind of never. It's just never, for whatever reason, it's just never happened, which I always find interesting.
Yeah, it's totally interesting, but I totally get it. I think also playing with other bands, it just happens. Like, not that it's always that way, because a lot of bands we tour with, we get along with great, but there is some competition. I think that's just kind of the metal. When you get out there and you're going to play, everybody, they're friends and stuff, see each other backstage, but once you get on stage, you're all trying to be number one. You're all trying to be the best band that night. And I could see that with those two bands. They're both phenomenal bands, and I'm sure with Priest, it's a little bit of like, we were the daddies, because like if you look at the way they dress, like if you look at early Maiden, I love Maiden. Don't get me wrong, they're one of my all-time favorite bands, but I can look at Priest and see where a lot of it came from. I'm just being honest, like.
Well, no, you're 100% right, and that's the other thing about Priest being so influential is, like, look at what they were wearing back then, and that whole scene. I mean, the whole new wave British heavy metal scene, when I first got into everything in the early '80s, that was all about the leather and the spikes and the studs. I mean, is that, and that all came from Priest. I mean, Priest not only started the revolution, but the image of heavy metal with the leather jackets, and that really became from Priest.
Yeah, without a doubt. So I kind of get it. And, both were hot shots. I mean, Priests were hot completely. And then all of a sudden, here come these young upstarts from the UK who are amazing. That's a great argument. And I think it's going to be like the Beatles and the Stones for the rest of our lives. It's just the way it is. The Iron Maiden and Judas Priest are the top bands. But like I said, back to Priest, you got to give them credit. Look how long they've been going. Look at how much great material they put out. It's unbelievable. And for us, it's always going to be one of our top bands. It's just the way it is. And thank God for Exciter. Seriously, that song, it spiked everything, dude. Like, when I hear opening tracks that kick ass, normally I think of Exciter, because that's the track that really got me thinking your opening track's got to be out of this world.
Yeah, that's, we talk a lot about that on this show too. The sequencing of albums and opening tracks is a little bit different now with the way people are listening to music, and it's not necessarily that much. Although I think the metal kids still listen to an album in an album cycle, so the first song is always really important. But yeah, back then, and that was one of those ones where you put it on, you're like, oh my God, what is happening here? Like I said, when I first heard it, I was literally just in shock. I mean, the whole record's phenomenal, but that first song was just, I'd never heard anything like that before.
Yeah, and even the dual harmonies on the guitars, that's another thing that we haven't even scratched the surface, really. This track, you could talk about it all day. But the harmonies that they're using on the guitars, they always had this epic thing. Like, I think that's the thing with Priest. Like, you felt like you were getting your money's worth every track, and the work that they put in on those guitars, like Glenn and KK. Come on, man. Like, for me, when KK left, it was like a marriage splitting up. It hurt, So, but bless them, they changed our lives. Let's just put it that way. They changed our lives.
1000%. So what's going on? Give us an update on what's happening with Hirax.
Well, we just got off a U.S. Canadian tour, which was our most successful tour yet. It's been like an uphill battle, but that's what metal's about, But finally, things are really starting to click for us, and we're just trying to keep busy. Like, the main thing is, once you start getting more successful, then you've got to maintain it. So now it's more about, touring again. We got to go back out and, put some more music out. But the touring really is a big part of it now. I mean, I've realized that, especially now that I've been doing it for a while, it changes everything. People are more interested in the band. So more touring. Like, the new year, we'll be going on the 70,000 tons. That'll be the first thing we do, and then we'll back over to Germany, go back to Europe, do Germany, Sweden, and then back to the States. Like this was our first U.S. full tour, and I forgot that there's certain pockets in the U.S. that are really amazing. Don't get me wrong; it still needs work. The U.S. is different than touring Europe. It's way different than doing Japan and South America, but there's still a lot of diehard heavy metal fans throughout the U.S. So the tour was kind of emotional because you're seeing like different generations. You're seeing moms and dads and children come to the shows. Like Hirax has been around for over 40 years now, so to see these different generations coming to the shows and people telling us stuff that we never expected to hear, that like the music changed their lives or it helped them get through some really hard times. I mean, I'm just really grateful to still be doing it, to be honest with you. Like, no ego at all, man. I'm humbled. The fans have changed me, so like the touring has been really good for me. And now it's just different though. Like, I don't party anymore. It's all about, I'm trying to do the shows and I don't want to let people down. So it's a different Hirax. It's just, I think maybe I've grown up just a little bit,
Yeah.
but just trying to give people a good show every night because I don't want to let them down. So
Yeah.
more
Yeah,
touring and more records. That's basically what's going to go on.
Good. And there's a big resurgence in thrash metal too, which is going to help you guys a lot as well. So that's your timing on that is really good. Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate you for doing this.
Thanks for having me, Brian. It's been great chatting with you about Exciter because, like I said, that song, it changed my life. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about Judas Priest and stay metal.
Thank you. Now you can't leave yet because we have to upload